I have in my private practice met with people who said, I'm not spending any more money on my kid. I've spent $150,000. Right. I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. He or she walks out and they go right back to what they were doing.
That's right. With this podcast, what we're trying to do is have real, authentic discourse. John Creuzot, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Yeah,
today.
Thank you.
I've known you for actually really since the beginning of us starting Inner Health.
Yes.
I think we go way back, and you even know one of our co-founders, Dr. Urschel.
Yes.
From the early days.
Yes.
So you're on our podcast that we started about a year ago. It's called Treatment Redefined. And what we try to do is bring in thought leaders with various perspectives on mental health, addiction, substance abuse. Could be in the treatment system, and in your case, really somebody that's been within the legal system, pioneering a lot of work that I've appreciated from a distance. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here. Just by way of introduction, you've got over 30 years in the legal system.
44 years.
44 years.
Yeah.
44 years. Spent time as a prosecutor, judge, district attorney.
Yes.
2 terms. Really pioneered, like I was hitting on. We're going to dive into some of that today. But in the late 90s, pioneering a lot of those drug courts.
Yes.
Helping to divert people really into situations where they could get rehabilitation.
Yes.
And I thought we might hit on some of those topics today because you have a lot of families that are struggling with substance abuse and mental health issues, and they've got legal issues that are often ongoing. And I think with your insights and kind of being on the inside of pioneering some of these rehabilitation programs, really on a micro but also macro scale, I want to dive around in some of that and see what some of your learnings were.
Okay.
But maybe just by way of kicking it off, maybe just give people a feel for your background, kind of where you grew up and family situation, how you kind of got to be an attorney.
Well, I spent my first 9 years of life in New Orleans. My dad is a New Orleanian, and he was in World War II, but he finished up his service in Virginia, and there was a naval base there, and he wound up going to school there at Hampton Institute, which is now Hampton University. He met my mom. They got married. My oldest sibling my brother was born in Virginia. My sister and I were born in New Orleans, so obviously the family moved to New Orleans, and I stayed there until I was 9, and then we moved to Texas. We moved to Houston. Okay. So that's kind of my early background. And I finished high school in Houston. I went to North Texas, got a degree there, and then I went to SMU and finished law school in 1982 and went to work for the district attorney's office in Dallas.
Okay. Yeah, I think you and I have talked a little bit about this. My wife's side of the family, we've got family from Louisiana, grew up in the Marksville area.
Yes.
So I've always appreciated that portion of the country and the people that come from there.
And as I said, that's my grandfather's hometown.
Yeah. Yep. It's a neat town, actually. It's a neat little town.
Yes.
Okay, so if I understand it right, and just help me clarify this, now, was your mom a social worker?
Yes.
Growing up?
Yes.
Okay.
Good memory.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually my mother got a degree in home economics. So when she actually finished college at age 19, and I don't think it was unusual for her cohorts back in that time, and she grew up in a small town, to actually finish high school at age 15 or 16. And she went straight to college, and she finished at age 19. But with a degree in home economics, I don't really know why she got that, but you're living in a segregated society, so she was not able to work in a traditional sense to get a job. And I think she actually worked somewhat as a domestic at somebody's home for the first few years. And then she went to work for the Louisiana Welfare Department. And when we moved to Houston, she decided to go. In fact, she finished in the first class of the social work graduate school at UH in 1971. Okay. And there's a classroom named after her there.
Oh,
so
that's very
she
neat.
wound up being a licensed master social worker, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you get some exposure to seeing her being more or less really in the helping profession, helping
Absolutely.
people with a variety of issues?
Yes. So I remember going to what we call the projects, public housing in New Orleans, to visit her clients and their families and what have you. And there were times when we didn't have a lot of money, but my mom would buy milk or diapers or something, whatever she could to help a family out. And so I was exposed to that. helping other people. The other thing was my grandmother actually helped a lot of people during the Depression and helped feed people. So she had a yard that was a long yard, not a wide yard, but they had ducks and chickens, and she grew a lot of things. And my grandfather was a dentist. And so there was money in the family, and so they were able to help a few people out. And she talked about that a lot. I didn't see it, but she talked about it and talked about the people who they helped. My family is Catholic, and the church that they attended was not far away, and so they had a great relationship with the nuns and the priests and people who went through the church for help.
Oh, that's very neat. That's a powerful influence being around that growing up.
Yes, it is.
Very neat.
Yep.
Okay, well let's fast forward. Let's jump into, you were a prosecutor before you became a district judge. Is that right?
Yes.
What was that like beginning as a young prosecutor? I've always had a deep appreciation, just so you know. I think we've talked about this. I was a lawyer for a few years before I left and we started InterHealth. And when I was in law school, I did a internship at the DA's office.
Okay.
I actually worked under Toby Shook and one other gentleman back when they were trying the Texas 7 case.
Oh, okay.
Back in the days.
Sure, yeah.
And it was really interesting to me because I was able to get a real bird's eye view of how the prosecutors work alongside the investigators and they go about their work. And I just grew up having a real appreciation for how hard they work and how quickly these attorneys get trial experience.
Yes.
Because you really get in there and you get going quick and you're cutting your teeth on all sorts of cases fast.
Right.
What was that experience like for you, jumping into that and then navigating to becoming a judge? How did you go through that process?
Well, first of all, being a prosecutor is an immersion into trial work, if that's where you go in that part of the office. And I did. And so I was doing just common crimes, DWI, theft, assault, and then, of course, eventually you're promoted to a felony court, and then you start doing armed robbery, murder, capital murder, sex assaults, child sex assaults, and those get very complicated. And in those days, it wasn't digital. Everything was on paper. And so it was actually a lot easier to get ready to go to trial. On the other hand, we didn't have as much evidence because we didn't have body cams. Confessions and witness interviews were not videotaped. And so we just had whoever told you what they told you. Right. And so we had to deal with that. And sometimes you question whether what you were being told was correct or accurate. But we had to work through it. And so my early days, was trying a lot of cases. In fact, we went back recently and before and looked at my trial stats, and I had 130-plus jury trials in about 4 years. And that's either as the lead attorney or the attorney who picked the jury. So there's a lot of work in the courtroom, and you're assigned to different judges, so you learn how different judges work. And you pick up what to do and what not to do. That's right. And so I left in 1989, and for about a year and a half, I was in private practice, and then Ann Richards appointed me. And so all of that, what to do and what not to do, I brought with me. I took it with me. That's right. And, of course, you have to learn how not to be a lawyer. That's an interesting thing. So you've been a lawyer for 8 or 9 years in the court trying cases, and then all of a sudden you're a judge. And you have to learn over a 2 or 3 year period how to turn that off and turn on how to be a judge. And so that was, it took me a while. And I finally realized, what am I doing? Why am I worried about what they do and the decisions they make? My job is there an objection? How do I rule on it? Not to micromanage in my own mind what's going on. So that took a while. But we were successful in trying cases, and I think in having fair trials. Any judge will get a case reversed. I remember the first case that was reversed was something that between the trial and the reversal, the law changed. And so the appellate lawyer was able to take advantage of that, and it was legitimate. But you learn how to conduct yourself as an elected public official because you have to get elected first appointed for me, and then elected. And then you have to learn how to work with a variety of people, including the prosecutors. They all have different personalities. The defense lawyers, they have different personalities. The families that come in, the defendants have different personalities. And, of course, at that point, when you're the judge, you begin to see things from a different perspective. And it's not a case and a person, and I think I want this outcome. It's what's presented to me, and how do I make a good decision on it? And so it's an entirely different look at the criminal justice system.
Yeah, no, I can't fully appreciate making that transition to judge, but the way you described it makes a ton of sense.
Yes.
Help me understand, or help our audience understand, how did you go, where did the drug courts, the divert courts, what was the genesis of this? What were you seeing? Because you're a real pioneer in the area of setting up these systems, and I've always been intrigued by people that start things or begin things. Like, what did you see happening that made you realize something needed to be done differently? And then how did you garner really the inertia to get it going? Was there support when you first brought these ideas to the table? I'm just trying to get a feel for what was that like.
How did it
in
evolve?
That moment of time?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see people come and go, right?
Yep.
And the interesting thing is when you're untrained in the dynamics of addiction and crime reduction through dealing with mental health and substance abuse, you make a lot of really poor decisions because you don't know. And they don't teach it in law school. And unfortunately, in that day, it wasn't important as a practicing lawyer, either as a defense attorney or as a prosecutor. So, yes, I did see the revolving door, but I didn't know what to do about it. And the things that I did do about it, I learned later I was making a lot of poor decisions and probably increasing the likelihood that somebody would not be successful. So around 96 or 97, the drug court movement started, and it started to spread out. And there were some people in the administration, Dallas County administration, who saw the grants, and they thought, why not? And they looked into it and made a presentation, and I was present at the presentation. And somebody named Jeff Tauber, who was a pioneer in drug courts, he came, and he and I spoke. He was a judge in California, and he said, hey, you ought to give it a try. I think you have the right personality for it. And so it started from there. The people from the county got the grants and kind of put it together. And they even went so far, when you talk about whether it's being successful or not, obviously, as you know, you want a control group, and you want to compare the control group to the people who went through the program.
Right.
And so since they were thinking about it, they were keeping the names and identifications and the outcomes of the people who didn't have the benefit of the program, so that when we started the program, we already had our control group. Okay. We didn't have to look for it. We just had to look for the similarities. And so that made it real easy. So we started with training. It was national training, and I started to learn and change. But not only just in drug court, but in court also. In fact, there was a judge who says, how do you do this kumbaya drug court thing and then go to your regular court? And I said, well, I started kumbaya in my regular court. And so, I mean, the decision is the same whether they're in the program or not. They present the same. And so I understood the value of assessment, of how to do an assessment, a risk needs assessment, a substance abuse, a mental health assessment. I didn't really understand the value of those things. They were done, but I paid no attention to them. Right. And so I started using that as kind of a springboard for what could be done. And as we went through divert court, and then we had SMU do two studies. They did a recidivism study and a cost-benefit analysis. And so we had a 68% reduction in recidivism, which was unheard of because nobody ever studied anything.
It's incredible, actually.
Right? And for cost-benefit analysis, every dollar spent was $9.34 in avoided criminal justice costs. So that's when I knew that, okay, we're on the right path and we're doing things the right way. And so that energized me even more. And then, of course, when you do the national training, as things evolve, for example, when I first started doing drug courts, there was no such thing as medically assisted treatment. That was taboo. Don't discuss it. You're crazy. You're supposed to be off of everything.
Hey, that was, I would like to call you Judge, but Judge
That's
Creuzot.
okay.
That was the way it was when we first started InnerHealth.
Yep,
I think
that's
you
right.
and I talked a lot about this.
Yep.
I mean, we were looked at as a pariah in the recovery community because we were trying to use these really anti-addiction medications, but medications that worked.
That's
they helped
right.
reduce cravings significantly.
Right.
The research supported all of it.
Right.
And Dr. Urschel, quite frankly, was a huge pioneer in saying,
Yes, he was.
we need to bring these things forward because
Yes.
this is what our patients need. And frankly, from our perspective, the facts speak for themselves. I mean, this was what's typically was being done did not work.
Right.
So why would you not bring something forward that's been proven to work and see if it can help your patients?
Right.
I
So
get that.
I'm going to give you a term, and I use this term quite often. It's called default mode. And we were in a certain default mode, and that is you get off of everything, and you stay off of everything. Well, let me tell you where I saw that being the biggest problem was ADHD medications. Okay, if you can't pay attention, you're not going to get the benefit of what's given to you. And there was a big struggle within the team because I had people there who were AA people. And you don't do anything, okay? And then I had some who didn't care and some who were confused, and one or two were on my side. Except I was the judge, so I had the opportunity to make the final decision. And so we slowly transitioned to MAT, to medically assisted treatment. And now nobody even questions it. But I saw that nationwide. I saw that at the conferences with the judges, with the treatment providers, et cetera, how we struggled through that. And now it's become mainstream. So even in the field of addiction medicine and treatment, and whether it be mental health, substance abuse, there are a lot of things that have changed. The value of the assessment is much more important today, as you know, than it was back then. It was almost virtually ignored.
That's right. So give me a feel for it. Just break it down a little bit more granularly. When these, when your cases are coming through your court, who would be eligible for a diversion? Would it be based on these assessments that are being done? So you could say in part. Would it be a certain type of crime that would make them eligible? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Go ahead.
Different layers.
Finish the thought for me. What made them eligible to be able to have this? Really, I look at it as like an opportunity.
Right.
To be able to get really rehabilitation, which from my perspective, I believe treatment works, but we're going to hit on this in a minute. I don't think all treatment works. I think it's not like all doctors are created equal, not all lawyers are created equal, not all treatment's created equal.
Right.
But in general, treatment works.
Right.
So what types of individuals got access?
So it depends on how you decide the program and how you design the program.
Okay.
So let's say I want to do a juvenile program. Okay. So I want 13 to 16-year-olds. Well, okay, that's a cutoff.
For sure.
Right? Nothing below that, nothing above that.
Okay.
And then let's say I want low-risk people only who've done a risk needs assessment. Okay, well, then you limit it to that. But if you want your bang for your buck, as you know, you really want the high-risk people because if you're going to put money into it, you want to get the most bang for your buck.
Right.
And so a lot of programs have been taught over the years to use the assessment to decide whether you're low, medium, or high risk. Okay? And then what is your risk? High risk for what? Is it for substance abuse? Is it for violence? Is it for aberrant behavior? And so you may cut out some of those. And then the other thing, too, is you may fit all the criteria except the program won't allow you in because you have a prior case. And so that eliminates you. Okay. So there's all kinds of ways that you can be included or excluded.
Okay.
And so what has happened over the years across the United States is there have been various, experiments with different populations. Some are women only.
Yep.
Some are women only and who've been sex trafficked. Some are men only. Some are men with violent offenses. Some are first-time offenders only. Some are a first-time felony offender, but if they ever had any type of assaultive offense, they're not allowed in. Some allow them in, some don't. So it's really how you design it. But once you design it, what you do with the assessments, the value you give them, and the other thing that I don't know that you're going to talk about, but that gets back to why I talk about inner health to other people, not just today. And that is the quality of the service delivery is one of the most important things. I have in my private practice met with people who said, I'm not spending any more money on my kid. I've spent $150,000. I'm not doing it. He or she walks out and they go right back to what they were doing.
That's right.
And I've had to, on numerous occasions, say, okay, let's not jump to any conclusions. Let's not give up yet. Maybe we will, but let's not assume it.
Right.
And let's take a look at where you sent the kid and what they delivered. Okay?
It's crucial.
And a lot of times what you found out was all they went to was an AA type treatment facility.
It more often than not, that is the case.
That is the case. And so so they said that they had a psychiatric component to it. Did your child ever go through that? No. Was there a psychiatrist there? No. Were any medicines offered? Oh, of course not. No medicines. Okay, so what was delivered? Well, they went to AA meetings 3 times a day and it's that. Okay, and you paid $100,000, right? Yeah. Do you know you could have gotten that for free?
That's exactly right.
All you needed was a sponsor and a place, and you could have gotten that for free. And so let's try to reconfigure this decision and see if we can find somewhere that better suits the needs of your child. So the other thing that I did in private practice was I utilized one, and I don't know if you remember this, but I utilized Christy Compton, who's a PhD psychologist, and she did all of my full-scale evaluations. Because one of the things that is in the middle of this is mental health.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if you are not addressing the mental health aspect, you probably won't be as successful, or maybe not successful at all, with the substance abuse.
That's right.
And so getting that teased out and cleared off and try to figure out how to combine those two treatments was one of the ways that you create success.
Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. It's... For some reason, I feel like our treatment system's really bifurcated mental health and substance abuse, and really they're one and the same. And I didn't, it took me maybe 2 weeks to realize after we had begun Inner Health that we're really in the mental health field. Just our patients they're using to offload a lot of those feelings, really to nullify a lot of those symptoms, and just you didn't want to feel this way, so you use in order to calm yourself down.
Right.
But in order to fully address it the right way, you have to have the mental health and the psychiatric component involved in treatment. They call it dual diagnosis treatment.
A co-occurring disorder.
Yeah, co-occurring disorder. But it is bringing, and who is best suited to address that? Well, I think having a psychiatrist involved helps.
Yes.
And more than just rolling through a couple of days a week, making sure your detox is okay. You've got to spend time with patients. It's one of the things that I feel like is so missed, and we're going to maybe hit on some of this in a minute. It's just I think our system has set it up to be this way because so much of the payer systems don't really reimburse for the level of care that's needed to get patients better. It's a more or less a managed care standard of care, which incentivizes volume, quick movement, lower levels of care for people that maybe shouldn't be there in the first place.
Right.
It's hard to get the, say, residential or intensive treatment unless you failed out 2 or 3 times. Over the last 18 years, my thought is there's worth a study in there to look at how many people hurt themselves or hurt others that couldn't get access to the level of care that they needed because they weren't eligible to get in there in the first place.
Well, many. Yes.
So,
and places close down. There are facilities that are doing a good job and can do a good job, but they close down because of the reimbursement rates.
That's exactly right. And, this is an interesting topic because I think about this a lot about what we do. And we're just one facility here in North Texas over the last 18 years trying to do, and you have to really grind on it every day. Mm-hmm. It's not a McDonald's. You can't really stamp them out. You got to have your hand on it. Every person involved really has to be unified in the mission of what you're trying to do. But I wonder sometimes, how do you really attack this issue that we're talking about here on a macro scale? We're doing it on a micro scale. Here we are in Inner Health doing this, trying to bring forward treatments that we think work. We can educate, we can inform. But how do you really attack this problem on some scale?
Well, so let's talk about that. Back in 2005, the state of Texas had 150,000 occupied prison beds. Mm-hmm. And the state was told that you will soon need another 17,000. And it was a bipartisan effort. Rick Perry was the governor at the time, so it's a different political dynamic going on in the state. And he and the Democratic leaders decided we're not going to do that. And so what will we do? Well, the only thing that was actually studied and had promising results was the VERT court. So they didn't actually change the law. They changed the funding, and they created more opportunities for assessments.
Yep.
Okay, they created a statewide better, and some people would argue about that, but risk needs assessment. They put in trailers or a substance abuse and mental health component to see some screening to see if you needed a full assessment. And then they created more safe P beds, substance abuse felony punishment facilities. And then we created intermediate sanctioned facilities, which were 90 days instead of maybe 180 days. And some of them dealt with cognitive behavioral problems. Some of them dealt with mental health problems. And some of them dealt with substance abuse. So we could triage you out to where you needed to be. And to make a long story short, and today we have 136,000 prison beds, not 167 plus. Okay?
Yep.
So you can actually do this. And then one of the other things was they created some incentives for counties to do it. And then they put together what's called diversion money, that you had to justify the use of it. That is, you had to have better outcomes than not using it.
That's right.
And as that spread across the state, there are now several hundred different programs across the state. Now, how well one is run versus the other, that's an open question.
Yep.
The state has more recently started to evaluate or take a look at the programs to see which ones deserve to be funded, or at least a certain portion of funding, and they're starting to cut back. Okay, some of them, the judges don't show up, or
Right.
they're doing all kinds of things, and so even that needs to be monitored. You know, that you have a program, and so one of the things that I'm really big on is outcomes. And I want to distinguish between output. An output is how many people go through.
Right.
An outcome is what impact did it have on them.
That's absolutely
And so I think the place where we really need to focus on is when we refer someone or we create a pathway for treatment, how well, first of all, are they delivering the correct treatment?
That's
Number
right.
one, and how well are they doing it? And I think that's the next area. And I've said this for 20 years, that we don't do enough of that.
No,
we don't look for that. And
Right.
that was one of the things that I, in private practice, appreciated about inner health, is that I had a pretty good faith that, and I don't know what your therapist to patient ratio is today. It used to be 4 to 1.
It's still
And-
about the same.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, when you go into the public sector, it's 20-something to 30-something to 1. You're not getting a lot of good quality time. And so the thing that I appreciated was that I understood the ratios were low. And I used to go up, as you know, and visit with the therapist and my clients, and I could see the progress or lack of progress. And it wasn't the therapist's fault. It was usually some hang up with the person. And so trying to distinguish what that is, sometimes it takes time.
Yep.
And it takes patience to allow that person through, which is the same thing in drug court. So if you have an 18-month time frame to have somebody in a drug court, you see them come in oftentimes not so well and leave out very well, but there's a lot of bumpiness in the road.
That's right.
And so you have to be able to weather that with them.
So so speaking of time, let's hit on that just briefly. So with the drug courts, were they in there that amount of time, about 18 months?
Yes. The drug
Okay.
court was, yes.
Now, hot sports opinion on this, but I think time is one of the most crucial factors. I think delivering the right treatments, like we've been discussing, having
Yes.
the right people doing the right things, very, very important. It's table stakes. You got to have competency. But time is crucial.
Yes.
One of the things that I see is just even outside of just the public system, but even in the private sector where we are, is a lot of the patients and families, they don't have the time necessary to get better. Again, it goes back to, I think, a lot of the system and how things are reimbursed, but we're trying to move people too quickly through the system
Yes.
and get them to the lowest level of care, which really is the most affordable level of care, but get them through it quickly. And what I find is that, and we talk about this internally all the time, is that we could have a patient come through, spend 6 weeks with us, maybe inpatient, 6 to 8 weeks, do outstanding, excellent work, but we're just in the beginning innings of this ball game.
Yes.
They're going to have to get out, and then you've got to have a system and a handoff and relationships, either internally or externally or both, that guides these patients and families through this process.
Yes.
And so one of the things with like the divert cords and the success that you were having, because I was reading up on it as we were getting prepared for this, and I was thinking to myself, time and leverage, which is interesting, healthy leverage being a legal issue over your head, but having the time with that, I think can create a real opportunity for success.
Yes.
Because you're giving them the time to really reassess their life. And you really can't do it with 30 days and done. It's not like you're just putting in a loaf of bread and it's done after 30 days.
I don't know that I've ever seen 30 days work.
I've never seen it work. I just know there's an expectation in our society that we should be able to get this done quickly.
Yes.
And I find more and more programs, if you will, that pop up that everything's about shortening and concentrating. And there's so much about human nature and the complexity of what we're dealing with.
Yes.
Being mental health issues, substances are involved, there's family issues. People often have a long-lived life sometimes that lead up to this, that I don't know how you undo that and fix it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You need time. But I'm a big believer that if patients and families will give us the time, okay, and we'll work on making it affordable and making sure that we can deliver it to you over that period of time in a way that is acceptable to you. But if you will give us the time and allow the treatment to take place, you will get better.
Yes.
Like the prescription works.
Yes. So one of my clients, you wouldn't have any reason to know him, but it's many years ago. I think he spent like a year out there. Now, he went in first on the heavy-duty program, and then you all worked out something with him where he stayed there, and he participated, and he became a part of the landscape, so to speak.
That's right.
And as far as I know, he continues to do well.
Yes.
I didn't give him a nickel's worth of chance when he first went out there because he had so many problems, but he stayed.
That's right.
And his stay was a good 6 months, and then he was, kind of stepped down to whatever else you all did with him. And he wound up going through some type of process with a son. I got him a family lawyer. And the mother who he had the child with, she was a drug addict. That was part of his life.
Yep.
And those rights were terminated, as I understand. I'm not really certain, but he got custody of the child. They wound up being back in Dallas. The child was in school and doing well, and he went on to take some, I don't know what, it wasn't like going to Harvard to go to Harvard for school, but he took some courses there. His dad happened to be a Harvard graduate.
Oh, wow.
And so he had an in there, and everything turned out well for him, but it took time.
It takes time.
Yeah. In fact, I remember a funny thing. When he first went there, the staff called me and said, "Hey, are you coming up to see him?" And I said, "Nah, not coming." And they said, "Well, you come and see all your clients." I said, "I don't expect him to be there 72 hours."
I think I remember that.
Yeah. And he stayed much. And when he was there about 3 weeks, I said, "Well, maybe I need to go and
go see what's
him.
going on."
Yeah, right. Because oh my God, he was a mess. I mean, he was just terrible. And then I've seen some others who it took a prison trip before they went to Inner Health.
That's right.
Okay, and all of a sudden things started making sense.
That's right.
And I know people that I had in court and in divert court or otherwise in safety and what have you, and they eventually just got to a point where I said, "Look, I'm working harder at this than you are. I'm working harder at keeping you clean." And so revoked their probation, gave them a prison sentence, and I've seen them on the streets, and they said, I wasn't listening to anything you said until I got to prison. Then I started thinking about all the things that you had told me, all the little tips and tricks and this and that, and then it started making sense. And I started putting that into my life, and I've had people come up and say, "I've been out since '08, and I have a house, I have a job, I have a car, I have a this, I have a that, and everything's going well."
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yes. But it took time.
But it took time.
Yes.
And I think about, the role that we're in inner health is we're particularly at the residential level of care, which is where you and I have a lot of experience together. But people generally are at more or less like a rock bottom. There's something going on that's not allowing them to be able to be successful in their home life, in their career, may have legal issues.
Yes.
There's a lot of things going on.
Yes.
And we're trying to help them rehabilitate that and give them a course of treatment that not only gets their life back, but allows them to have a quality of life moving forward and reestablish those relationships and be a productive citizen in society. And like we talked about, it takes time.
I want to introduce the word rehabilitation, but I want to take another word, habilitation.
Yeah. Yep.
In the criminal justice system, and you've seen it where you are, there are some people who don't have a foundation. Their lives have been a mess from day one.
That's right.
Family, neighborhood, this, that, and the other. And it doesn't matter what they look like or where they're from.
That's right.
It's a mess. It could have been from Highland Park.
That's right.
And it's a mess.
Yep.
And those are people who need to be habilitated.
I agree.
And then you have people who have had some normal life and they got off the pathway and they got into addiction and aberrant behavior and what have you. And they may be a little easier to work with because they have that foundation. They just need to get back to it.
That's right.
And so you take these two different groups of people. One needs habilitation. They
That's right.
need a foundation.
That's right. That's
They
right.
need the lot cleared. They need a foundation put down
That's right.
and build up from there. And then you have the others who their house just needs to be cleaned up.
You're hitting on something actually I was kind of leading towards that, which is we're in the role of treatment. And you're right, we have patients that need habilitation. A lot of them probably need rehabilitation, trying to get them back. At least there's some foundational elements there.
Yes.
But I sometimes wonder, like when we talk about attacking these things on a real macro scale, because I think it's important that we recognize just how prevalent drug abuse and alcoholism is. Alcoholism still, even though there's declining numbers of people drinking alcohol, it's still the 500-pound gorilla in the room. But the prevalence of drug abuse, and now having had 3 kids that have gone through school and they've gone through a private education, and we've still seen, just watching them through the lens of their eyes, just the prevalence of the drug use.
Yes.
Even a lot of the marijuana use, the different things that are going on that are causing. I always often say we're kind of the canary in the coal mine because we're seeing these things as they're happening, and then they get reported on later.
Right.
But we're seeing a lot of young people come in, a lot of cannabis abuse that's been laced with things that are causing psychosis.
Yes.
And I keep thinking, okay, well, we're getting them now, and we're going to deliver the best treatment that we know how to do. But what are the things we can do in our society and pockets? Is there anything where investment can be made to help them earlier to avoid this? Or is this just something we're going to always have to deal with? We're on the end of treatment, but is there an ability to be somewhat preventative in some of these things?
Oh, I think so. I think it's the quality of parenting, I think, in
100%.
some respects, and that doesn't have anything to do with socioeconomic situation. It's the quality of the parenting.
That's right.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I think education, I think a person's internal emotions have a lot to do with it. Sometimes that's not anything that they understand.
That's right.
And it takes them off in a certain direction. I think that there are personality disorders that people don't understand, the average person.
Yep.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. And that takes a special treatment in and of itself.
You're right.
And so I think there are a lot of factors out there that contribute to where a person is. And that's why I want to go back to what I said, using that PhD psychologist to do a full-scale evaluation. So I remember having a client, I don't think she ever wound up at Inner Health that I recall. But in any event, I remember talking to her family, and I said, from what you've described and what I've seen, I think she's borderline personality disorder. And that's very difficult to deal with. And we talked about that and that. And then subsequent to that, the psychologist came in and did the full-scale evaluation and told them, your kid's borderline personality disorder. And they were like, what where'd you get that from? She says, well, blah, 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 blah. She talks about the test. She says, that's what John said. And so she said, yeah, he's been around. Mm-hmm. And these are fairly common behaviors mm-hmm. for people like that. And,
that's right.
And so her whole, everything changed. The family changed.
That's right.
When they understood that.
That's right.
And then there was another young man, I know he was out there. That was another thing. Mm-hmm. We actually got all of his criminal cases taken care of, dismissed, just gone away once everybody understood the depth of his mental health issues. And then he went there, and he's just done phenomenally well as an adult since he went through inner health and was actually focused on what was wrong. And that was another case where we had that same psychologist do the full-scale evaluation, and what I would do is deliver that with the person to you.
Yep.
And so that was always the foundation by which everybody went forward. Yep. And I think I don't recall that I ever had a patient that didn't do well at inner health.
Well, I appreciate that feedback. I share the same sentiment with you that, and we talk about this amongst our team all the time, that you can't solve the problem unless you know exactly what the problems are.
That's right.
And I think great treatment begins with great diagnostics, right? And it's a variety of assessments that are being done. You're getting biopsychosocial assessments from therapists, you're getting medical assessments, psychiatric assessments, neuropsychological exams, different vantage points. And then you bring that treatment team together and you can understand what the problem or problems may be.
Yes.
Then you design the course of treatment. That's where when we say things like, well, treatment's very personalized. Well, that sometimes is overused. You need to start with, why is it personalized? It's personalized because we each have our own sets of problems, and ours are different. We may both be using, but the diagnostic problems are going to be different.
Right.
So, and again, that goes back to the time element. It takes time to do those.
Right.
It takes time to collaborate. Well, first conduct the assessments, then collaborate, and then really understand what is it we're going to try to solve here. And once you have it in place, let's put a treatment plan together that really hits on those particular issues.
All right. Well, one of the other dilemmas I had was with the parents who said, look, I've done this before. I'm only paying for 30 days.
Yep.
That's all I'm doing. Well, then they tell that to the kid, or I said the person, the child, however old, and, that sets in their mind that I'm out of here in 30 days.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Well, okay, we have a problem. Mm-hmm. Okay, we don't know where he or she is going to be in 30 days. And so if we start setting these artificial boundaries, you've told them all they need to do is put up with this nonsense for 30 days and they're out of here.
That's right.
And so if you do that, you're
true.
working against yourself. And,
right.
and I understand it's more money, but the question is, what result do you want?
That's exactly right.
And if you can afford it and you want that result,
right, then
get off of these time frames.
That's right.
And let's work on progress.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. There's some new things that I'm really excited that we're working on. I'm going to run some of them by you because you're very well versed in this. If you're ever looking for a new career, you need to give me a call. I think we've got a role for you at Inner Health.
Okay. All right.
I can tell your diagnostic capabilities are pretty good. But one of the areas, we were talking about the dual disorder and dual diagnosis and bringing in psychiatry together with therapy, use of medications. That's really been the gold standard, right? Great therapy plus use of medications appropriately is gold standard. This area is under a little bit of change right now. It's pretty fascinating. I really feel like since COVID hit in particular, there's been a number of people really looking at psychiatric conditions. How do you really diagnose them properly? Are they diagnosed properly? Mm-hmm. And have we set up arguably a little bit of a psychiatric system where we're treating symptoms instead of really understanding why you have the symptoms in the first place?
Yes.
Now, I find this area absolutely fascinating because we have a number of cases that I think are borderline true miracles where we have known people, because we just started this about a year ago. We call it functional psychiatry, and that where the name derives from is really taking the best of integrative and functional medicine, those concepts, which are pretty interesting because it's more of a total body outlook, looking at everything actually running a number of biomarkers, blood panels, understanding symptoms and history, and taking the time to really critically think, why do you feel this way? Instead of jumping to a conclusion so quickly or operating in a silo, a discipline, where it's very difficult to get outside the bounds because for a variety of reasons, but you probably just don't have the time to mess with it, nor is it really worth your time to mess with it. So let's really critically look at what's going on here. I find this area completely fascinating because we're starting to get to where we understand how the interrelation of what goes on in your body really affects the symptoms that we think really live in the mind. And that end up being diagnosed into a DSM criteria or a psychiatric bucket of this is what you have, therefore these are the medications you get, and you're off in the running. I think it works to an extent.
Right.
But I think there's more pieces to this puzzle. And taking the time to really dive into your, say you were an example, your history, looking at a number of biomarkers that are important to the symptoms that you've been presenting, looking at in totality with the other assessments that we already do, and then coming up with a real complete picture, you might find out there's a lot more going on than what originally meets the eye.
Yes.
Because in psychiatry, as I know you're aware, you don't really ever look at anything blood-wise. You're not really looking at what's going on in the body.
Right.
Whereas any other area of medicine, if you presented with symptoms in the emergency room at your normal doctor's office, first thing they would do is a set of diagnostics.
That's right.
We don't do that in our space historically. So we've begun this, and we started it about a year ago. We started getting our practitioners trained, and we are just now starting to kind of roll out and see different little vignettes, if you will, of patient examples of presented with this is what we found, very different than what previous diagnoses had been. Started a course of treatment, which, by the way, might not be completely revolutionary. It's almost basic medicine to an extent. Looking at the unique biochemistry, you might have some micronutrient deficiencies. What are the combinations of treatments we can do over the course of the next 3 to 6 months that can kind of help us achieve goal? It's really been a fascinating journey. So I kind of wanted to just put some of that into your mind as you're moving forward in your career, because I think it's a little bit of the new frontier in psychiatry to an extent. Is getting a little bit more learned on what's going on with the overall body system as opposed to simply just diagnosis symptoms.
Yeah. I mean, let's be realistic. Psychiatry has its own default mode.
Absolutely.
And it's become a 15-minute med check.
And, you nailed it.
And very few psychiatrists are on health plans. You
nailed it.
You pay your money when you walk in, and you get your 15 minutes, and at 15 minutes you are escorted out, the next person comes in.
That's right.
And every time you go, that 15 minutes costs more and more and more. And so there's no way. And then the other thing, too, I've seen, which is just terrible, when I was following more what was going on in the jail, every 30 days, a psychiatrist would go see a person, and it would be a different psychiatrist. And whatever medicine they put them on, the other one would take them off and put them on something else. And you know yourself, for the effective level of any of these medicines to work, it has to go close to 90 days.
That's exactly right.
And so these people are never getting stable. They're constantly complaining about them and this, that, and the other. And as I learned more and learned what they were doing, I was like, you're not giving them a chance.
That's absolutely true.
And I even got a couple of the psychiatrists to admit that's not proper medicine.
It's not.
But what happens is it's jail medicine. And then our response is we're going to send you to the penitentiary. Yep. And then when you go to the penitentiary, you're on the formulary of very old, very cheap drugs. Yep. And so they fill you up with that. Eventually they parole you, they put you back out on the streets, and you're just about as cured as when you went in.
Wow.
And it's a terrible thing. So all of this, this whole issue of how we treat the person really needs to be rethought.
Yeah. Well, you've been a huge pioneer in it. You should be really proud of the impact that you've made in your career.
Thank you.
Your reputation precedes itself, and you've done an amazing job. So over the last 18 years since we started InnerHealth and just getting to know you from time to time, I can really tell your passion for it, and it's real and it's authentic, and I've always very much appreciated that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I remember going out to InnerHealth when the pool wasn't even ready. That
was
only,
always
only about 4 or 5 rooms ready. I mean, you all were actually
right.
really, truly getting started. My son was a little fella.
I remember.
Yeah, and he was running around, and Dr. Urschel's son, I don't think was there, but anyway, we talked about it.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Those were beautiful. That was a beautiful time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. Well, as we kind of come to a conclusion on this, I always like to have a little final question. As you look back over your career, 44 years, looking at the things that you've done, maybe just hit on the areas where you really feel like, and what we've talked about, we've made improvement, but where are some of the gaps that you would like to see some focus be?
Well, I think the one that I've talked about, and that is, what are we delivering? So let's take our state in-prison therapeutic facilities, SAFE-B, Substance Abuse Felony Punishment Facility. Okay? We can tell you how many people went through. We can't give you any recidivism numbers, or they're old and probably questionable.
Yep.
And one of the things, unless it's happened recently and I don't know about it, and I've said this for 20 or more years, is we're not really focusing on what we're delivering and the impact it's having, hopefully positive, on the individuals who are going through.
Yep.
And so what we've done is created reentry courts, and I started one of those for people who, from my court that I presided over, went to SAFE-B, and I brought them back on a structured program. And after 2 or 3 years, we studied that, and we had superior outcomes.
I believe it.
Right. We revoked fewer people. We had more people successfully complete probation. Now, it wasn't like these were people with criminal records, and some of them were violent cases and what have you. So we're talking a different group of people. A lot of these had more serious mental health problems, and so we're talking about them. But we did see success. And we saw some very compelling success. In fact, I'd like to just take a moment to tell the story of one young man who came in, and he sat at the back of the courtroom, and he was very angry. You could tell that. But there was always the same young lady seated with him who she seemed more confused than angry. And at some point, I started talking to him, and he kind of eased up. He was less angry, and he moved from the last to the next row up and finally he put himself in the jury box, where he was always right next to me. And what I found out was that he had been raised in a violent environment, and stepdad, boyfriends, dad, whoever were violent towards him, and that became his default mode. And that's how he saw the world. And, of course, every time he went to the courthouse, what did he receive? Prison. So we're not any friends. He doesn't see me as being a friend. But bringing him back from that environment and being in a courtroom where we're talking about our issues and our problems and how to solve them and doing some role modeling and stuff, he started to rethink who he was. And his default mode changed. And one of the last things I knew about him was he was working as a mechanic of some sort, and somebody stole his truck and stole his tools. And he said, before I met you, first of all, I wouldn't have had the tools in the truck. But if I did, I'd have gone out and used. I'd have solved it that way. He says, today, I'm working on getting more tools on another truck, and I'm staying clean and sober. So there's a true turnaround, a true default mode change. And one individual who came in very hostile, very angry, and left out very productive.
I love that. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you.
Yeah, same here.
I really appreciate you giving us your time. And, again, I'll just say it. I just really appreciate the work that you've done. So
well, thank you.
Thank you for everything that you've done.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks for all that you all have done.
Thank you, John.